Welcome to Code Sandwich Hour, a certified fresh event where we talk code and sandwiches, and it takes about an hour. This week's special guest is Suze Shardlow. Suze spends her days as a developer community manager for Redis, but she has an extensive resume that extends far beyond that, and it includes being an award-winning community manager, coder, tech writer, and event MC. Welcome to the show, Suze.
Thanks, Sean. How are you today?
Good. It's great to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, I usually jump right into my favorite question of the day, but you already mentioned in the chat that it's super hot in the UK where you are. So I felt like, can we start with we'll start with the small talk, the weather. What is the actual temperature? What's going on over there?
Oh, I am British, and that is our favourite topic. So yeah, let's have a look. I have a handy thermometer here in my office. In my office, it is 28.5 degrees Celsius, which is 83 Fahrenheit in the office. So I can only imagine.
That's inside. That's inside.
Yeah, inside. So outside, it's probably going to be about the same, actually. Well, I'm right at the top of the house, so all the heat's risen up. So it's probably about low 80s, mid 80s outside.
And is that normal this time of year? What's the norm?
We get a couple of days like this every year, so we don't get long stretches of this, thank God. Tomorrow's going to be really hot. Tomorrow's going to be more like 90. But yeah, it's generally quite bearable. But we do get the odd really, really hot day in this country in the summer. So this is one of those days.
Okay. I was particularly interested in it because I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we're going through the same sort of thing. Now it tends to be about that hot most of the summer, but we were in the 70s a week or two ago, and now I just checked. Today's 91, so 33 Celsius.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's rained a lot, so it's also like 70% humidity. Yeah, it's brutal.
That's the worst. That's the worst bit. Yeah, I can handle the cold, or I can handle the heat as long as it's dry cold or dry heat. But yeah, if you throw in the humidity, it's horrible.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the questions don't keep you on the hot seat too much, and we'll just we'll breeze right through this. It'll be great. Be a great show. So with that, let's start with my favorite question, which is, what is the best sandwich?
The best sandwich is a sandwich that somebody else has made for you. I feel like food in general always tastes better when somebody else has made it for you, doesn't it? But sandwiches in particular, I don't know what it is about a sandwich that somebody else has made. It always tastes better. But for me personally, I do like eating meat. It's not for everybody, but yeah, something with like chicken or ham, or if I'm going to a sandwich bar and they've got ingredients there that I wouldn't normally buy for myself, I do like a bit of pastrami. And I like rocket as well. Nice peppery taste in there. I don't tend to have much in the way of condiments, so I rarely put butter or anything on my sandwiches because I feel like there's enough in the ingredients. So yeah, some people might feel like that's a bit dry. Maybe a bit of mayo. I don't know. But yeah, it's got to have some sort of meat or prawns or something like that in it. And as for the bread, I'm quite partial to like a baguette type bread, something crusty, or a roll. But I currently live in the Midlands, UK, and there's this thing in Britain as like you can figure out whereabouts in Britain somebody comes from as to what they call a bread roll. So here in the Midlands, we would call it there's a whole map. Like if you go on the internet, you can see a map and it will tell you the words in each area. But here in the Midlands, we call it a cob. So yeah, I do like a cob or a baguette. So yeah, if you can tempt me with a sandwich that's got meat in, that's good enough for me.
I kind of love the answer that you're flexible. There's this whole like framework, and there are boundaries, and the boundaries are it's got to have meat, and somebody else has to make it, and then it's probably a good sandwich.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely.
I like that. And I 100% absolutely agree. You can take two sandwiches that are otherwise exactly identical, or yeah, like you said, food in any way, identical. And if I made one, it's not the same. And I don't know why that is.
No, I think it's because you knew what went in it. There might be a secret ingredient that these other folks are putting in that they don't tell you about. I don't know.
Yeah.
An extra sprinkling of love. Maybe we need to love ourselves more, and then our sandwiches will taste better. But yeah,
Maybe.
it always tastes nicer when somebody else makes it.
Maybe you found the secret. But does that? I'm trying to think. Like, does that translate to other parts of life? Like, if you make the same, if you build the same website that somebody else builds, do you appreciate what you built more, or do you like what the other person built more? Not that that's a realistic scenario, but what do you think?
That is a good question. I think something like that, we've all got our own ways of doing things, and we've all learned in a different way. And trying to read somebody else's code sometimes is like the worst thing on earth, isn't it? So,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And creating a website requires a lot of empathy, and a lot of people forget that. They don't put themselves in the shoes of whoever's using it. So you generally tend to create, it sounds terrible, doesn't it? I think most web developers create the website for them. They don't think about other people. They think of themselves as the typical user. So I think the answer to that question is no in that case.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, if you're tuned in and you know who those users are supposed to be, then you're and are coding empathetically, then theoretically, yeah, you're serving the project as best you can.
Ideally, yeah, but in reality, I don't think that's the case. So yeah, interesting question though.
All right. So with that, let's take a quick step back and then we'll jump back into the show. So the format of the rest of the show will be going through a series of 3 segments, each with its own purpose and usually a punny name. We'll try to create some sort of pun, and I generally try to create a theme that's catered to our guests. So since we have Suze here today, I've been told that you enjoy running, and so our theme today is going to be, just loosely call it, running a race. We'll see how that goes. For those of you who are listening into the recording, these shows are recorded live generally on the first and third Thursdays of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time in the States, which is 5 p.m. GMT. The live shows are then later syndicated on cfe.dev and YouTube as videos, and also available in audio format wherever you get your podcasts. And so with that, I'm ready to get started. How about you, Suze?
Yeah, I'm a bit scared, but I'm ready.
Okay. No, it'll be great. We'll keep it like nice and loose and open-ended first, and then the hard questions will come. We'll save those for the end, I suppose. Okay. So segment number 1 today, I'm going to call the starting block. And I'm saying that because a race begins with everyone on equal footing at their own starting blocks, and where we go can change drastically based on our abilities and the decisions we make along the way. And so in that vein, let's start by exploring the early days of your career, those the jobs, the activities that kind of set the foundation for what you're doing now. And so I had read a bit that you began in marketing, but I'll just keep it open. So can you tell me where did your career begin? Who were you working for? What were you doing?
Okay, so the nutshell version, because my career began a long time ago, because I'm quite old. But so the UK education system didn't know what to do with girls that like coding, and I would argue they still don't know what to do with girls that like coding. So there was never a path for me at school I wasn't even aware that you could do it for a living, but I was always interested. So I got my first computer when I was probably about, I want to say, between the ages of 5 and 7 years old. And it was a BBC Micro, made in England. I was coding very happily on that all the time. And then there came a point where, I didn't take any further because I didn't really know what to do. But also the age of the home PC came in, and we got this PC. I was like, oh, I don't know how to code this. It's all like GUI, you can't see what's behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of stopped coding then and didn't really know what I wanted to do. So like you say, I went into marketing, and I took a business degree because that was the most versatile thing I could think of. Specialized in marketing. And then I had a range of marketing roles in different organizations. So at one point, I worked for the Canadian government in economic development, trying to attract people to invest, to bring their businesses over to Canada. I worked for an engineering company. I worked for a small IT consultancy. And then I got a job with the police in London in communications in their tech department. So London's police service is the largest one in the UK. And at the time, there were about 50,000 users. And some of the systems, some of the IT systems or hardware or software were being used by every single person in the service. So, for example, everybody had to log in to the network to do stuff, like to get their email. And then there's subsets of the service that only needed certain things. So quite a lot of people needed a radio every day. So when we had to update those things, I was there supporting those rollouts with communications, trying to persuade people of the benefits and show them how to use these things and stuff, because I was still really interested in technology. So I was always kind of sort of adjacent to it, but never really knew how to get into it. And my bosses didn't know how to help me to get into it either. And then I went through a few different roles in the police, because one of the good things about the police is they do have a lot of different things that you can get involved in. So I did that for 4 years, and then I thought, right, I want to get closer to, because I think policing is in the community. So I wanted to get closer to the community. So then I ended up managing logistics and stuff in the police stations, which was really good. Being right on the, not myself being on the front line, but working with frontline officers and stuff. So that was a really different thing to do, and it was more local. So the IT was very centralized. This was more actually in the local police stations.
Okay.
And then I thought, I still wanted to do tech. I still wanted to do coding, and I didn't really know how to do it. So I started doing some research, and around that time was when the boot camps were really becoming more well known. And I realized I could go to a boot camp and learn how to code. Well, I already kind of knew how to code a little bit from when I was a kid, but learn about modern software development. And at the same time, I was hearing rumblings that they might want to make some layoffs in my team. So I discussed it with my boss. I took a career break to do the boot camp, and then came back, and all the timing, it was one of those ones where everything just fell perfectly into place. So when I came back, they said, yes, we are going to make the layoffs, and if you want to go, then you can go. And because I had 12 years of service at that point, the severance was really good. So I went and did that. And then I had a few sort of things going on in my personal life. I had a bereavement and things like that. So it was actually quite timely. I had some time to just kind of chill out and figure out what I wanted to do. And quite a lot of good options came my way. So I didn't go straight into working full time for anyone. I just did a bit of sort of freelance work. And then the opportunity at Redis came up, and they had heard about me, and they asked me if I wanted to apply for the role of developer community manager at Redis. And I thought, yeah, actually, that's quite a good combo of what I've previously done. So, the marketing.
And looks like we lost Suze here. She was having some computer issues earlier today. Maybe it's the heat. I don't know here. Let's see if we can get her back on. Ready. Well, we've got seeing a comment from Brian, her computer crashed again. I think it did. We ran into an issue before the show began and her computer crashed. Yeah, maybe it's the heat. I don't know. But it could also be that we were talking sandwiches and she's in the middle of a story and just like had to go get the sandwich immediately. I don't really know. Oh, wow. Okay. So now, yep. Now Brian is telling me that IT has force updated her machine and it's rebooting. And this is a timely sort of thing because we were literally just talking backstage before the show began that um, Suze has talked to other colleagues that have gone through this process. Like they were doing a live stream and their IT, it's like IT can push this update automatically and force you to reboot. And she's had colleagues that have gone through that scenario where you're live streaming and then all of a sudden it's just like, nope, it is time to reboot. You're stuck and we have to update. So let's not hope it's like the classic Windows update and we'll be here for, I don't know, what is it, 20-30 minutes or so. So we'll give her a few minutes to jump back on. In the meantime, we have a few folks who are hanging out here live. So anybody have any questions that they want me to ask Suze? We can slot those in there. Usually, as I mentioned, we do these 3 segments of the show, and so we're right in the middle of this first one where we're talking more about the journey, how she got started, and we'll soon transition into kind of like what she's doing today. So that'll be a lot, I think, about community management, potentially some of the exciting things that are happening at Redis. Don't totally know. This sometimes with these shows, I've I guess the way to say it is like I've got more of a what I should say, I suppose, is that the structure varies pretty significantly from guest to guest, and sometimes it's pretty clear what the path is going to be, and occasionally, since this is newer, we've only done a few of these shows. This is show number 6. That I'll kind of leave it up for leave it loose, and just kind of guide us along the way. And then, of course, our last segment is always these nice short questions with short answers. So depending on how quickly we can get Suze back online here, we'll see how many of those questions we can get in. But in the meantime, seeing that a few of you are still online, let me know if you have any questions, any topics that you want to discuss, or I guess any general thoughts that you have, drop them in the chat. We can have a conversation here as we go. We could talk. Well, it's Code Sandwich Hour, so we could talk code. We can talk sandwiches. We can really do whatever you want. All right. So let's see. Just a minute here, and I'm going to see if we have any updates. Okay, checking in on ETA. Alrighty. So no update yet. We'll give it a few more minutes here. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Thanks for hanging on with us. And it looks like it's going to be just a couple minutes. So I'm going to hang out. You're welcome to hang out as well. You can also feel free. Well, you know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is Code Sandwich Hour, and I don't know what time it is where you are. If you're over near Suze in the UK, you're approaching dinner time probably. If you're where I am in the States at this point, really anywhere in the States, you're lunchtime adjacent, I would say. So could also take a break and grab yourself a sandwich while we break, or take get a little work done, whatever feels natural. And then it looks like we will be back on here. I'm hoping hopefully within about 5 minutes or so. We'll see how this goes. Okay, and you know what? While we're waiting, why don't we can talk about what we've got coming up here soon. So let me. I'm going to pull up some notes. Okay, so upcoming CFE events next week. That's June 23rd at this same time. So 1 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. We have Taylor Barnett, who is going to be live talking about Jamstack and databases. She's going to show us how relational databases, easy for me to say, why they're still important and relevant to today's Jamstack applications. And I think that's really interesting. If we consider this movement to the Jamstack to have started in the last 5 to 7 years or so, there was such a huge push at that time to separating. Part of it, I think, was decoupling all these services, but then a big part of it was also pre-rendering as much as we can, which came with I would say like the downfall. But if I would to group myself in there, I built so many different proprietary CMSs or even open source CMSs, but just like self-built these things that I ditched mine. We saw a lot of people ditch their own homegrown CMSs and start to pick up these headless CMSs. And so we had all these different services that we were able to wire together, and we had to worry about managing infrastructure and keeping things live all the time. And so that was it was a really solid pattern. But as the Jamstack evolved, it was so compelling to kind of the typical use case that what we then saw were more bigger companies like getting interested, and so we had to evolve it. And now modern architecture is like we're able to build enterprise level applications with this similar sort of approach or an evolved approach. And databases are very, very much in the mix today, and I think becoming more and more important in this pattern. So long-winded way of saying, definitely come back next Thursday. That's June 23rd at 1 p.m. And that's surely to be a really great event hosted by Brian Rinaldi. Okay, and with that, it looks like Suze is back, so I'm going to invite her back on stage. Welcome back, Suze.
Sean, I'm so sorry. Brian, I managed to get a message to Brian, but yeah, he is right. The computer decided it was going to do a little install in the middle of what we were doing without asking me. So I was as surprised as you were. Sorry about that.
And I was telling the audience who was hung around that we were talking about this exact event right before we started. You were like, "Yes, that's happened to colleagues. It hasn't happened to me yet. It could happen." And then like, yep, a couple minutes into it, and here we are.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I can stay a little bit longer at the end, so don't worry about having to stop on the air. If you can stay on this, so can I. Yeah, no worries.
Fantastic. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get those really hard, or I don't know. I had to, one other version that I shared of this story, which was like, maybe you actually needed to go, you started talking about sandwiches and were like, actually, I need to get one immediately. I'm going to sign off for a few minutes. Another theory I had was that, maybe we just need, those hard questions are coming at the end. So if we took a quick break, we might not get to those, but.
Well, you can combine the two because it is actually around dinner time here in the UK. So that is a good excuse, isn't it? Just go and get a sandwich and be like, oh, now I can get out of answering the hard questions. So
win for sure. Okay, well, yeah, let's let's jump back in and kind of we'll wrap up that first segment. And one thing I was really curious about is that as I look at my career, which didn't start in tech, and it changed, it evolved, and have had other guests and friends and colleagues who have taken similar path where it didn't necessarily start with tech. And I think that yet when I look back, I can see that there is this clear path of my interest that kind of moves through every job. But specifically, one thing that I haven't really run across someone who has spent a good portion of their career where they ended up in tech, but that a big part of it was public service, and specifically for the police. So I find that super interesting. And one question that I had there was, so you said there were 50,000 users for the Met in general. And I'm curious that, what was the balance between how many of those folks are actual officers, and like how big is the folks who aren't out there in the field?
Okay, so at the time there were about 30,000 police officers and 20,000 police staff, or as you might call them, civilians. But some of those police staff are also on the front line because we have police community support officers, and they don't have the powers of arrest, but they do have other things that they can do. So they go out and assist the officers. So they're very much operational as well, and they use the radios and they use a lot of that equipment. So yeah, it was at least 30,000. And then I think we had about 14,000 police community support officers, and then the other 6,000 people were doing all the other things, like the job that I was doing, or working in forensics, or all of that good stuff, accounting, HR, all of those things. So yeah, at least 30,000 officers.
Okay, wow, really interesting. Okay, I've got a few more questions, but I feel like this is probably a good time to segue into our second segment, which I'm calling the stride. And I'm calling it the stride because usually in the race, if it's a race that's going okay, eventually you'll hit that stride. And so in our careers as well, we hit that point where we feel like we're doing what we should be doing. Maybe we're not there yet. Maybe we know we're gonna still have some twists and turns, but feeling good at the moment. And so I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing at Redis today. But first, let's with the work at the Met still in mind. How would you say that your time helping? So you're like embedded in communities there. What would you say you've pulled from that experience that you can apply to work that you're doing with tech communities today?
Well, one of the main things that I realized really early on, like when I was studying marketing, is that your audience is key. So if you're ever going to be doing any form of communication, you need to think about the audience. Where are they? What do they respond to? How do they communicate? Because that gives you a clue as to how to communicate with them. What do they care about? What don't they care about? You think about these officers that I was trying to tell about this technology. These things were a tiny little thing in the whole kind of big mix of things they have to remember. Because, when you're walking down the street, you don't know what you're going to meet. You need to know your grounds for stopping somebody. So you need to be able to remember all this stuff. And if I'm coming and telling you you've got to press a different button on your radio, like why would I even care about that? Why don't I, so you're really kind of fighting for priority, I guess. So yeah, knowing your audience is something that I learned really early on in my career, and especially in the police, because those 30,000 officers, it's just a massive group, and it's really different because you can join the police when you're 18 and you can leave when you're 48. So you had people that were quite old who weren't used to using technology in the same way or the same type of technology as the 18-year-olds. And so, yeah, the group was really different. I also was leading the employee resource group for senior women in the police as well when I was there. So yeah, and it's funny and not funny that I've gone from a really male-dominated industry, in police, to another really male-dominated industry. But yeah, sort of seeing the struggles that women were facing in the police, like women face the same struggles in tech as well. So yeah, there were a lot of things there that, you know, were similar. But yeah, mostly it was about kind of deciding how I'm going to get my message across and out there, and helping people to help others as well. So, you know, I used to try and find champions in different units to kind of spread the word about how to do things or why it's important to do these things. Because London's made up of 33 boroughs. The Met Police is 32 of those. The 33rd one is the City of London, and they have their own force just for that borough. That's the
Interesting.
financial. Yeah, so that's the financial. So they do it. Their work is quite interesting because they work on a lot of fraud and stuff. So the types of crimes they're dealing with can be quite different. So yeah, if you think about the geography of London's one of the biggest cities in the world, or at least in Europe, I guess, especially in terms of population, and also the footprint of it is quite big. So I can't go out to, and this was before the days where we were really doing virtual stuff. I can't go out and actually meet people face to face and give them the messages that I need them to know. So I need to liaise with champions around the place and stuff like that. So
Okay.
yeah, and that is something that we like to do in tech, isn't it? You know, we like to help people to help themselves and help others. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned working in a women's group at the Met as well, and then you've since been leading the what is it, the Ladies of Code group in London. So yeah, well, I suppose first maybe just can you give us a little bit of an intro into that group? Like what's the format? What are your goals and all of that?
Okay, so I first got involved with them before the pandemic. In fact, it was when I was trying to figure out how to get into development, and I realised that you could go to these meetup groups and learn things. So I started going to the meetups, and that's how I first came across the group. And then a few years later, they needed another organiser, so I got involved that way. But what you often find when you go to meetups is, even though their meetups don't say they're just for men, when you go there, it is mostly men. So we wanted to create a safe space for people that aren't men to come and learn. And, you know, if you want to practice speaking, then give a talk, and then you're not going to get like mansplained by anybody. You're not going to get that "what about this?" Well, actually, type stuff. So we try to provide a safe space. And then obviously, so we've got, how many members have we got now? Nearly 4,000 members now. And it
Wow.
grew,
Okay.
yeah, it grew quite a lot over the pandemic because we weren't restricted to London. So before that, we were only doing in-person events like most groups were. And so it was really people who could get into London. So people that were working or living in London, or people that lived near central London and could just come in of an evening. But then in the pandemic, we were faced with two choices, which was either stop everything or go online. So we decided to try online, and it was a bit scary. I think anyone who's run an online event for the first time in the pandemic can attest to that. It was a bit scary the first time. But yeah, then it became quite easy, I guess, because we just learned together and just figured it out and stuff like that. So I'm quite proud of the fact, actually, that in the early days of the pandemic, so in the first year or so, we did deliver quite a lot of events, and one of them is still going now. So we put together some series. So one of the series, the one that's still going now, is called Get On With It, because when the pandemic first came along and we were all locked down, everybody was saying, oh, you've got so much more time on your hands now. You know, when you get a job after the pandemic, they're going to ask you, what did you do and how did you improve yourself in the pandemic? But actually, there were a lot of people that had less time on their hands in lockdown because, say, for example, they had caring responsibilities. So say they, for example, had a child that was disabled, and they might have been using respite services normally. And then lockdown came along and all of these places were shut. So then they've got to do their full-time job and they've got to look after their kids. Or even if, your children aren't disabled, but you normally would send them to school or somewhere else during the day, and then you get on with your thing. So you couldn't do that. So people were finding that there were things piling up. And so this was a bit of time that we carved out and said, look, just come to this session on the Zoom. There's no judgment or anything. And it doesn't have to be tech related. But some people did decide they wanted to create apps that they've been putting off for ages. And some people just they wanted to sort out Lego bricks with their kids. Somebody put up a shelf, that kind of thing. And so the point was to just give a bit of mutual support. But also, if you were finding that you were lacking motivation to get started, just the act of saying out loud what you're going to do kind of galvanizes that goal and makes you more likely to achieve it. So that was one of the series. Another series that we did was Get Into. So they all started with Get On With It, and then we decided to just get all of it. So Get Into was where we interviewed people, sort of a bit like this, a fireside chat about their role, because people think about tech, from the outside looking in, it's all a bit mysterious, isn't it? And you think, right, okay, I'm quite interested in tech, but I don't know if I can code, and I don't really know what else is in tech. So we picked people with different roles and we interviewed them about their jobs. So we had Get Into Web Development was the first one, because that is the way that a lot of people get into tech. But again, it's still mysterious. So I deliberately chose somebody who had self-taught, because not everybody has the means to go to a boot camp or something like that. And we had Get Into Engineering Management, if you want to level up or you're getting into tech and you think, okay, what's beyond being a developer? What's the management track look like? Get into product management, get into data engineering. We had all these different things. And then we did a lean coffee series as well. So that's where you democratically pick topics to talk about, and then you have a limited amount of time to talk about them. So to have a discussion, 4-minute discussion, that was quite good. Yeah, that was quite fun. And we had another one. I can't remember what that was, but the one that stood the test of time was our Sunday co-working session. So that's still, I can't believe that it's still going on now, more than 2 years later. But yeah, there's been people that have been coming since the beginning, and for them, that's the thing where they come and get things done. So I'm really proud of that. And just over the pandemic, I think I've delivered at least 100 online events, at least.
Whoa, that's amazing. So that's more than one a week, or about one a week?
Well, since April, so that was 2 years ago. So yeah, it would be, yeah. And that over 300 hours altogether. So quite a lot of time chatting.
Wow,
talking into my camera lens.
Yeah, I mean that's a huge accomplishment, but I think that it's maybe even the bigger one that you said. There were so many of these virtual events that popped up, and they were great. Yeah, it unlocked the barriers that in-person events have, which are there are several. I mean, even for me in Cincinnati, it's a small city. We have maybe 2.5 million in the surrounding area, but it's funny. If you hold an event downtown, all of a sudden we cut our attendance to almost nothing, because people don't want to park downtown. They don't want to commute, or they've got to get their kids, or whatever it might be. And so at virtual events, it's okay, we can do this, and they just exploded. But what you mentioned was that if you have some that are still going today, I'm yes, if you are able to continue to do events post-pandemic successfully that are in a similar format that during the pandemic, it's well, you clearly struck a chord with that one. That's working well.
Yeah, it is nice that it means a lot to people and it's really helped them.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so well, I just thought of two questions. One was, well, I'll ask the broader one first, which is, you mentioned that there were similar challenges or struggles for women in the police as well as in tech. Can you talk a little bit about that? What are some of those struggles that overlap?
Getting promoted. So, as you go up the police, you see fewer women in leadership positions. As you go up in tech, you see fewer women in leadership positions. I guess being listened to and heard, just the sexism, the way you get treated at work, things that people find acceptable to say to you, generally, just the life of being somebody that isn't a man, basically. Just dealing with loads of unchecked privilege as well. So I joined a borough and I sat down with the borough commander who's in charge of the whole borough. And because I was the senior person in charge of logistics, he was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're on my senior leadership team, because not only are you a woman, you're also from an ethnic minority." I was like, "Oh, that's good. So I'm ticking 2 boxes there." I was like, "Do you realise what you just said?" And he got promoted, so that's all good, isn't it? It's just that thing. I think it is, if you're a woman anywhere in a male-dominated industry, it's hard. It's hard,
and it's and the struggles are going to be similar. So
yeah,
what is do you do any events or meetups that are focused specifically on some of those topics for the for your meetups in London?
Just in terms of like how to get ahead and how to get yourself heard. Oh, that was the other get heard. So
Okay.
It was a series of public speaking workshops, because we don't see enough people that aren't men on the conference stages. We don't see enough people that aren't white, that aren't cis, that aren't able-bodied. So it was really to help people to formulate an idea for a talk, and then that culminated. It was a 4-week workshop, and that culminated in a showcase session where the people who had gone all the way through, because inevitably you're going to get folks that come for a couple and then they have to kind of drop out. So the people that made it all the way to the end gave a talk at the end, and we recorded it for them, and we did a nice little event, and just to give them an artifact that they can use later if they want to. It was always easier to get more speaking gigs if you've done one and you can show people what you've done, isn't it? So things like that. But I kind of like to talk to people about what they do rather than what it's like to be a woman, personally, because I don't really want to center it around like, oh, you're a woman in tech, and somebody always asks about imposter syndrome, which is fine. If you feel like you're struggling with imposter syndrome, then that's something. But I feel like you don't hear a lot of men talking about imposter syndrome. It seems to be like a thing that's labeled onto women, and I don't feel like I'm an imposter. I feel like other people have tried to make me feel like I am one. So I think if you look at why you feel like you've got imposter syndrome, you might find the answer there. So I like to just talk about the work mostly, and give people a space to talk about what they want to do and how they can get there from people that have done it. Because I think that there's a lot of really well-meaning men that tell you how they did it, but it's not the same for us.
It's not the same. Yep.
We can't follow your blueprint. We can't do the exact same steps that you did and get the same results. So
Oh yeah, that is, yes, very interesting. I love that focusing on the work and those techniques. Okay, so the other question I had was, so this is like events. You've got your branded names, but the group is Ladies of Code. Do you still have men who show up to the meetings?
Yeah, and in fact, so we are still only virtual, and we do have men that come, which is fine. We welcome everybody. We don't exclude anybody. But when we were in person before I joined the group, they didn't include men. So if there were men in there, they would ask them to leave. And they did have quite a few occasions where men would turn up and they didn't understand why they couldn't come. And it's like, look, you can go to any meetup you want. We're telling you this is one meetup that's just for women. It's like it's one meetup in the whole of London that they're telling you can't come to. It's like, what? Why are you insisting that you need to come? It's like, you're welcome everywhere. It was just really odd. It's like the clues in the name. I mean, I personally wouldn't turn anybody away, but that's what they decided to do. And it was just funny that people felt entitled to come, even though the space wasn't there designed for them, and it was supposed to be a safe space for women. But yeah, we do welcome anybody, and we do have some good allies that come to our group now. But I think that if somebody's saying that this is who their group is for, then you need to respect that, even though you think that they shouldn't be excluding you. Just think about, are you excluded anywhere else? No. Are they excluded everywhere else? Yeah, they probably are. So just give them their space and let them have it.
Yeah. Okay. So the reason I asked that is because pre-pandemic, I was an instructor for a local chapter called Girl Develop It, and helping out because they were like, we're trying to get more women instructors, but it's like the community, especially of women developers in my town, is like, it's super small. So part of that was like, well, we're going to build this up, and eventually we'll have no male instructors, and that's the goal. Work myself out of a job, so I only ended up teaching a few courses there. But yeah, it was always like, well, there's one dude in the class, and like there are plenty of other resources that you have locally. So yeah, I can relate, but I am curious, where was the shift? So you had this really hard line of like, actually we're kicking you out, and I think that's really honorable. I really like that. But what changed it? So why that shift?
For me personally, because I wanted them to see what it was like to be in the minority somewhere.
Okay.
And to hear about what we have to say and things like that. But if anybody was, I don't remember this ever happening, but if anyone was going to start mansplaining, then I would have stopped that straight away and be like, no, that's not why we're here. But yeah, and also, yeah, so that, if there was anyone there who genuinely wanted to be an ally, then they can see what it's about. But yeah, I think as well, it's quite funny because some men are quite uncomfortable going into spaces that they're in the minority. And it's like, well, how do you think we feel? Like, it's really weird. It's like, have you not thought about this before? But yeah, I think it helps people to check their privilege a bit if you invite them into these spaces. But, other groups don't do that, and that's absolutely fine. I can totally understand why you wouldn't do it. But also, I guess a part of me didn't want to have that added level of confrontation when I'm trying to just run an event for people and get that done in a really good way. Like, that is something I just don't need. So yeah, it's
okay.
Unfortunately that is, the reality of the situation. If you're going to start throwing people out, then you've got another piece of work that you don't really need. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You want to keep it flowing, but absolutely going to shut down the mansplaining as soon as it happens. But that if you can do that, then you also create another teaching opportunity, which is very, very cool, very powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to be mindful of time and get this, at least most of this last session in, but we haven't really given any time to Redis. So why don't we take a couple minutes and but let's talk about what you're doing there. So what do you do as community manager for Redis?
So I currently am helping to produce a lot of content and also formulate the ideas for that. So we're doing a lot of live streaming at the moment. As you can probably tell, I'm a big fan of the series. So we're putting together some ideas for series that we could do for the live streams. I like to be quite strategic. So I don't really want to go on there and do just a random live stream. I want to have a reason. So examples of what I have done. So I've only been there, less than a year. But some things that I did when I joined live stream wise was we've got this thing called Redis University, and there's 8 or 9 courses that you can take on there, beginning from RU 101, which is Introduction to Redis Data Structures. And then we've got other courses. So if you're a Python developer, there's one for you. If you're a Java developer, there's one for you. So I decided, because I hadn't used Redis before, I thought, all right, I'll do RU 101. And I'd seen that loads of developer relations people have been learning in public. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll learn in public. So me and one of my colleagues, Justin, went through that course in public on my live stream. So that was a little bit of a that was a bit scary, but I think you should do something that scares you often. So, and then I did Hacktoberfest last year as well, which is the first for Redis. So Redis hadn't really got involved with that before. So I organised Hacktoberfest and worked with people around business to identify some repos, got some really good contributions from the community there as well, which is really pleasing and quite surprising actually. And it was really good for us because it was a testament to how well we'd written our READMEs and set up our repos that folks could just jump in and make these pull requests that absolutely worked, and they added a lot of value. So really pleased with that. And as part of that as well, had some fireside chats with the documentation team to demystify technical writing, because documentation is one of the ways that people often say that you can dip your toes into open source contributing. But a lot of people really don't know how to get started with it. And some people might be thinking, you know, I really want to be a technical writer, but I don't know what's involved. So at the time we had 3 technical writers. We've now got 5. But we had 3, so I did fireside chats with them to go into their background. And it was really cool because they've all got different backgrounds as well. So we're hoping to do some more similar things like that. I've also just launched an ambassador program called Redis Insiders, where I'm currently looking for folks that are passionate about Redis and they want to talk and write about it. And we can help them to kind of hone their talks and their blogs and stuff like that. So I'm looking for some people that are really passionate about the tech to come join us as sort of like, you know, volunteer ambassadors. And also always looking for a collab, love a collab. So if anybody else working, say, in developer relations for something that goes nicely with Redis, then maybe we can do a little collab together. Hit me up.
Love that. So many things you've got going on. So heard you say that you really like the series, whether it's live stream or not, that you like to put things into a series. I can relate. Love doing that. I have backed off of doing that sort of thing, including the learning in public piece recently. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this. All these ideas. But for me, I've started them and then they fizzle out. And so I'm curious, how do you ensure that they maintain maintain a focus, that they continue to be a priority? Or is it, you know, am I thinking about this wrong? Is it okay that some fizzle out?
That is a really good question. And like I said, I like to be quite strategic. And I think some people that work with me are like, oh, we go to Suze and she'll just say, yeah, you've got to plan it all out first before you start. I say, yeah, you do have to plan it out a bit. I don't want to be like the fun sponge, but, you know, let's think about what we're doing here and have a framework to it. And for Hacktoberfest, I actually wrote out like a big strategic plan of how I was going to do it, because I thought, right, we can't really just throw open a load of repos and just see what comes back. We need to actually think about this. And I think that if you're going to do a series, the thing that I always say to people, if they're going to start something, and a lot of the time people say we're going to do a series of this or that, and we're going to do it weekly. I always say to them, like, okay, plan out the first 6 and then see what that looks like. Because if you can't think of 6 things you're going to do over the next 6 weeks, then how are you going to continue beyond that? Or if you can't think of 6, think of 4, and then just do it as a limited series, because that's fine. And then, you know, it's always good to end on a high, isn't it? So then you've got to the end and you're like, right, okay, that was a nice self-contained piece of work. And then there's no pressure to keep going on for years, is there? And keep thinking of those ideas. So I personally would say, look at the bigger picture. What are you trying to achieve? And what realistically have you got material-wise that you can deliver? And then chop that up and see how many weeks you can get out of it at the beginning. You don't have to have the whole plan really laid out, because a strategic plan is just an overview, isn't it? It's not the detail. But at least if you had an idea of what realistically you can do, then you'll know how long you can go on for. But I've spoken to so many people over the years, they want to start something, which is great. And I think most people are like that. They want to start something, but they don't know how to do the middle and the end. And just at least think about the middle, even if you haven't thought about the end. Because like you say, you can fizzle out, and then like it's not fun anymore, and it feels like a chore, and it's like, oh. Whereas, you know, you could do 6 and you'll probably learn quite a lot. So like one symptom of this whole approach that I have, though, is that I'm a perfectionist. So I don't like to start something unless I know how it's going to look. And so, like I said to you before we started the show today, I've been thinking about making a podcast, but my perfectionism is a little bit stopping me from that. But I think and also the learning curve. So, you know, when I took all my events online, that was quite hard, but we did it. And now I'm quite comfortable with running an event online. And once I do my first podcast, it'll be fine because then I know how to do it. And I'll be like, what was all the fuss about? But I think what I want to do is do like a limited series. So I'll do like 6 or 10 parts. And over those 6 weeks or those 10 episodes, I'm going to learn so much about what has worked and what hasn't worked. And then I could start a new series and it will be different. And it's fine if you want to do that within your series and change it as you go along. But there's also some validity in saying, right, that was the end of that project, and I'm going to do it totally different, change the format completely, different topic, and this is how I'm going to run the next one based on what I learned the first time.
I love that. Yeah, I have since shifted to more project-based work. I think I've done 2 things that have been a game changer for me, that where I'm not like, here are so many things that I'm doing and I'm not getting anything done. And one was that I shifted to more of this project-based work. Like you had said, you don't need to know the end, and I think that's fine if you like, that's part of the design of the thing. I'm trying to do projects now where I always have just a general idea of what the end is. And I couple that practice with doing one thing on the side at a time per week. So like I'm going to work in weeks and only going to do one thing. And it's been a total game changer for me. Of course, it's not totally realistic. This week I was working on 3 different projects because it's life happens. But anyways, I really like that framework, project-based and having a plan. Going after a series in that limited scope. Love that. Okay, with that, let's transition to our last segment of the day, which we're going to call the last lap, or the final stretch, the last leg. It's the last portion of the race where you might not have much left in the tank, but we're gonna keep going. And so hopefully this isn't as challenging as running a 5K or a 10K, but I'll let you be the judge when we're done. So this is going to be a series of, let's see how many I have. I have 9 questions, sort of. There are some multiple, questions that are also multiple questions is the way I should say it.
Okay.
Okay, so they should be fairly quick, prompting mostly short answers, and feel free to pass on any of them. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll start. Let's start with local London question first. So, number 1, what is your favorite restaurant in London?
That is a really hard one because I have not been to a restaurant in like 2 years.
Oh, right. Yeah, true.
I currently live in Nottingham, so I moved. Okay. I moved out of London in January, and my favourite restaurant in Nottingham is called Le Mistral. It's a French restaurant, which luckily survived the pandemic. So that is what I'm going to say. London, I cannot remember where I used to go. Yeah, but no, Le Mistral is my go-to in Nottingham. I highly recommend if you're in the area.
Are you somebody who's like, same dish every time because it's perfect, or are you're like, I like the restaurant, I'm trying lots of different things?
I would try, but if it's something that I know I don't like, I'm not going to have it. So like, I know that I've never liked mushrooms and I probably never will. because I've done that thing of, you know, they use a lot of mushrooms in French cuisine, but I've done that thing of, you know, they say if you try something 7 times, you'll like it. No, that's never going to work for me with those mushrooms. But yeah, I will definitely try different things there because I like most of the stuff on the menu. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I like that. Number 2. Well, this is on the topic of ladies of code. We ended up getting pretty deep into this, but I'll pull this one out, which is, if there's one piece of advice that you had to give women who are new to the industry, what would that be?
That, that is a good question. I don't know. There's so many things. What did I wish I knew when I joined this industry? I guess don't feel pressured. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. There's so much pressure on people, especially like if you look at certain hashtags on Twitter. People say, "Oh, you need to blog about this. You need to get into public speaking." It's like, if it's not your bag, then don't feel pressure to do it. And like, you know, for some people, the thought of doing a talk is worse than dying. And I've seen people being forced to stand up and their bodies are literally shaking. So don't feel any pressure to do these things. You will get a job if you never do a talk and you never write a blog post in your entire life. Trust me, you will still get a job. You'll still be employed. You can still get paid a lot of money without doing that stuff. So if you don't feel like it's your bag, don't listen to all those people on Twitter, which is just a small subset of people in tech at the end of the day, isn't it? I mean, it is good for your career to do this stuff, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure on people in tech to do this. So yeah, don't feel pressured because there's so much else you've got to worry about. Because you've still got those questions like, which language shall I learn? Which framework shall I learn? So adding all of that into the mix is just needless worry, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I've found that I've gone through that, me personally as well. And I'm have to keep reminding myself of like, yeah, I don't have to do everything that you see on Twitter. That what is really important, I think, is meeting a lot of people, or meeting people that can also help your career. And like you say, you don't have to do that or you don't have to give a speech or talk at a conference to meet people. There are ways to meet people that are comfortable, probably, for most people, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3. So our theme today was running, racing. What's the most rewarding run that you've been on?
Right. So I know this one. I know the answer to this one. And I remembered it through this interview. So thanks for reminding me. So it was the first 10K race that I ever did. And it was just before you all got locked down for the pandemic. So it was in San Diego, in the home of where they invented the triathlon. So yeah, I entered this 10K race and I kind of thought I could do it because I had run 10K before. But it's a race, isn't it? And you always think, like, what happens if, I don't know, because I got asthma, what happens if I start wheezing and I can't stop? Or, you know, what happens if my knee hurts partway through? Or what happens if my foot hurts or whatever and I can't finish? But yeah, that was the most rewarding race that I'd ever done. And so when you said about the starting blocks and then the stride and the finish, the last, yeah, I did do a sprint finish. I think a lot of people do. It really reminded me, and I did write that one up as a blog post, like within a couple of days of doing it, because I knew that I wouldn't remember how I felt. But yeah, that was really emotional when I crossed that line. I was like, wow, I actually managed to do that. And like I said at the beginning, I'm quite old, so I came quite high in my age category as well. And I didn't do too badly overall. I can't remember where I placed overall, but I definitely was in the faster thing, and I did it in under an hour. So I'm really pleased with that. I think I came top 5 in my age category. So
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that was the most rewarding race I've done, because I never thought I'd run 10K. And when I started running, I never thought I'd run a mile. Never even thought I'd run 5K.
Yeah.
But the thing with running is it's really quick to get better at, and then you just kind of become a bit addicted. So yeah, that was a massive achievement for me, because I was never that sporty when I was a kid. I was too busy playing with my computer. So
and that's great. And I didn't know that the triathlon was invented in San Diego. That's a fun fact there.
Yeah, it's this place called, I think, was it Fiesta Island? Somebody's going to correct me in the chat. I know the Simon, who used to live in San Diego, is watching, so he'll tell me in the chat. But yeah, it's in my blog post. I think it's Fiesta Island. But yeah, that's where the triathlon was invented.
Interesting. Okay, number 4, sort of a segue. You know, if you finish a race, you get an award, and I feel like a big part of your resume consists of, and there are your triathlon awards. Great. Yeah. But also in the tech space, like a big part of your resume are the awards you've won. And I'm really curious to get your opinion, because I've heard polarizing views on awards. On the positive end, they can be a good self-promotion. There can be an opportunity for marketing that can be for individuals or organizations. They can also just be like boosting self-confidence. But I've also heard on the negative end, especially if you have to apply for them, like they can be distracting. It can take time. Maybe the whole like marketing thing doesn't always work out. And so I don't have a strong opinion either way, but I'm curious, what's your take?
I was nominated for mine, and I think I was actually quite surprised that I was nominated, and I was really surprised that I won. Because I think that we don't necessarily look at our own achievements as things that are necessarily great. You just think, that's something that I did, and to me it was easy. But it was just part of my job or part of my hobby or whatever. And so yeah, from that point of view, I was quite humbled and shocked. And I do put it in my bio that I'm multi-award winning. I do feel a little bit embarrassed about doing that, but the reason why somebody gave me an award was because they wanted me to tell people about it, and they wanted me to be recognized. So I feel like if I've got this thing, then why not talk about it? I have been in organizations where they've got this whole factory of nominating people, or especially if they're sponsoring the award, or nominating the company or the projects for awards. And I think that the thing that you've got to remember about any award is that it was only the people that were entered at the time that are going to be considered. So, for example, there are going to be like really talented chefs in the world, but there's only going to be the ones on the TV that get recognized. Like you look at MasterChef, there are amateur chefs on there that are really good, and then they get famous. Like if they've never gone on MasterChef, they never would have got famous. So they only recognize the people that happen to be there at the time and happen to be nominated. So I'm sure there are loads of people that have done really great things, same as I have, that have never been nominated, and so they never get recognized. So I think you've got to remember that as well. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but I do agree with you that there are some awards that are given, especially to companies, which are just, I know somebody whose company, they just paid to get one. They paid like $5,000 or something, okay. and then they've got one. There are other awards where they say you've been nominated and the award ceremony is coming up and you've got to pay £500 for a ticket to come and attend. And I think, right, if I don't pay £500, then you're not going to give me the award, are you? Because you're not going to say, oh, Suze won the award, but she can't be here tonight. It's not very good for the aesthetics. Yeah, yep. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff around it. But for me personally, it was just really nice to know that somebody valued my work enough to take the time to nominate me.
Okay, that's great. I love that, and I like how you distinguish between the personal award and the company and being nominated versus applying or paying. I think that's a great way to draw that line. Okay, number 5. Let's throw in another local question here. So you can do London, do Nottingham, whatever you prefer. But I wrote this in the context of London because, as you mentioned earlier, it's one of the biggest cities in the world, or at least in Europe. So tons of people, also tons of tourists. So I'm curious. Let's put restaurants and food aside for a minute. What's the hidden gem? Like, what's the thing that tourists don't know about, place or activity or whatever, that is amazing?
That is a really good question. Okay. I feel like I want to talk about the green spaces. So, like, even if you're in central London, you can find these little squares. They're just gardens, and it's so tranquil, and it doesn't feel like you're in central London. And you have similar in Nottingham as well. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about in Nottingham is we've got this place called the Arboretum, and they've got hundreds of different species of trees, and they've got a nice little pond. And I went there the other day, and the ducks were there with their ducklings. And those ducklings are fast, like they are tiny, but like it's like somebody wound them up and they just went. But I feel like that is one of Nottingham's best kept secrets, because it's just kind of tucked away and it's so quiet. And the really great thing about Nottingham is it's really easy to walk round. It's so compact. So it's like the 5th city in England, but it's really easy to get around. So for me, it's about getting away from the hustle and bustle and finding those little oases of tranquility.
So even in the little squares in the London area, you feel kind of removed from the traffic and the noise, at least temporarily.
Yeah, because in London, in those squares, the buildings around them are so tall. So they're these Georgian, really, really tall. They used to be houses, and then normally they've got companies in them, but they're like 5 stories high. So they block out the noise. So yeah.
Interesting. Okay, love that answer. Okay, number 6. So I read somewhere that you are a baker, or have been, or just enjoy it as a hobby. I caught on to that because I've also done a fair amount, mostly in the pandemic, but still trying to keep a little bit here and there. Okay, so maybe I'll ask this as a 2-parter, and maybe the answers are the same. But let's say part 1 is a last meal sort of scenario. You get one more baked good. What are you going to eat? What are you choosing? Versus part 2 would be, you can only eat one baked good for the rest of your life. What are you choosing? Maybe those are the same. Maybe they're different.
I think they're going to be the same. So one of the things I really enjoy making, because it's quite easy and it's stuff that you would have in the house anyway, is chocolate chip banana cake.
Okay.
If and it's really good if you've got bananas that have gone a little bit more ripe than you want to have them. It's really good for using them. Yeah, it's really good for using them up, and it just tastes so nice, and it smells really nice as well. And it's easy for you to make, and you can make it for yourself, so you don't have to go out and buy it. In fact, I'm not even sure I've found that in the shops ever. So you have to make it for yourself. But yeah, I could just imagine somebody answering this question with, do you know those cakes you can make in a mug? So you get a mug and you dump all the stuff in, you stir it and you put it in the microwave. I can imagine somebody might say that because you genuinely have all the ingredients in the house and you can have it whenever you want. And it only takes 5 minutes.
Oh, so you bake it in the microwave?
You can make cakes like that. There's this microwave mug cake thing. I personally don't do that, but I was just thinking that is a good answer to this question, because the thing with baking is sometimes it can take ages, but if you can make it in the microwave, it's easier.
Yes, definitely. Okay, I wonder if, I haven't heard of banana cake. I wonder if that's similar to what we have, or at least what I know is called banana bread, and if we add a little bit of vanilla or chocolate chips, then it starts to get cakey. Do you know if those are the same thing, or are they very different?
I think they're probably the similar. Yeah. Whereas you would make it in a loaf tin, so it would come out more in a loaf shape. I made it in a flat square tin, and then you just cut it into squares. So I think it's probably the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I should try your method, the cake method, because the one, with a really good bread, the crust it's like a good part of the bread. But I feel like with the banana bread, I don't want the crust. It's like a cake. Like I want the inside of it. So yeah, maybe I should change this format, cook it in the in the cake pan.
Yeah. Try that. I'll send you a recipe.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Okay, 3 more. Number 7 is, okay, so I originally only thought I was going to ask this question once. I think I asked it maybe in the second episode, and then the answers have been so amazing, so no pressure, that I keep it in there. So here's a 4-parter, and I can repeat them because it's a lot. So the concept is, you can take anybody to lunch. They can be living or not living. And the 4 questions are: 1, who would it be? 2, where are you going to eat? 3, what are you going to order to eat? And 4, what is the first topic that you are bringing up for discussion?
Wow. That is a big question.
It's a big question. Yeah, so much for the small, tiny, quick questions, right?
Yeah. I think I want to say Michelle Obama is the person that I would go to lunch with, but it would be quite scary. Or like, well, Michelle, I can't even speak because you were just something else.
Do the same thing. Yep.
Yeah, and she's really tall as well, so I'd be like, yeah.
Is she? I don't think I knew that.
I think so. I think she's really tall. Yeah. Whenever I've seen her on the news and stuff, she always seems to dwarf everybody else. Okay. Where we would go, somewhere that's really quiet, because I want to have Michelle's undivided attention. If you're going to have a dinner with Michelle Obama, you don't want everyone coming over and trying to get a selfie.
Great point. Yes.
So maybe somewhere local in Nottingham, because, people don't tend to. People come to the UK, they just think London, don't they? Or they think Edinburgh. They don't think I'm going to go to Nottingham. So maybe somewhere around here. What am I going to order? In a restaurant, I like to order something that I wouldn't necessarily cook for myself, because, like we said at the beginning, it always tastes better when somebody else makes it. And also, if it's something that's a lot of hassle, so maybe something like beef Wellington, because that's a bit of a faff, or duck, because if you're cooking duck in the oven, your oven is going to get really greasy. So I don't want that in my oven at home. And what was the last one? What is the first thing I'm going to ask them? I guess what advice she's got for me. And the reason I chose a woman of color for this is because people give you advice. It's like I said earlier, people will give you advice, but it's based on what they did. And, she's had experiences as a woman of color that a lot of other folks won't have had. And a lot of struggles that, that I would have had as well. So I would ask her for some advice, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what about. Maybe how to be heard more. I don't know. I think women tend to not be heard as much. So, maybe that.
Like that would be an amazing lunch. That was, that would be great. Love that. Okay. 2 more. So number 8 is, I was thinking, we'll call this one just random and obscure. Hopefully easy. Okay, so wherever I found that you like to bake, I also found that you like to do karaoke, and I think did it say your favorite song was? It's a Fleetwood Mac song. What is it?
I think it's Go Your Own Way. I think it's the
yes. Yeah. Okay, that was it. So the question is, what's your second favorite karaoke song?
Oh, Pink, What About Us?
Okay.
Is a good one. I'm not going to sing it now.
Probably not. No.
It's not one of her most famous ones. Or what was that woman? Rise Up by is it Audra Day? I'll rise
Sure.
up.
Oh
I'll
yeah,
rise
Audra Day.
unafraid.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't. You did say it might be obscure.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the messages in those two songs are good. Otherwise, something by heart, because I'm an 80s child. So like, what about love
amazing.
or Alone? You know, those power ballads.
Power ballads are amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Like the 80s was the best decade, and I feel sorry for anyone who's who's a child now, because you're not singing power ballads like I was.
It's right. And I was born at the end of the 80s, and I play a lot of music, but I cannot sing. I can't figure it out. So I don't do karaoke, but I tell you, like, very regularly in this house, we're like, power ballad evening. We're just gonna find some 80s playlist, and yeah, those are so fun.
They are fun. They're so cathartic, aren't they? Just get it all out.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, last question. This is my second favorite question, next to what's the best sandwich, and I ask this every show, and it is, what is the worst? Well, the way I usually ask it is, what is the worst mistake you've made as a developer? I would say, let's apply this to whether it's community management or just being in tech. But yeah, like, what's the worst mistake you've made?
I think some of the worst mistakes I've made are public speaking related. Nothing bad. Like, I didn't go out there and like curse or anything, but just making a mistake, or maybe not being as prepared as I should have been. So a lot of what I've done in recent years has been public speaking based. So I do a lot of like event emceeing, I do a lot of talks, I do a lot of hosting of events and things like that. And I went to speak at a conference in Berlin, and I had sent them my slides beforehand, and I didn't check what the slides were going to look like on their machine, and I wasn't using my own machine, which I would not recommend you do. If you can use your machine, please do. But I was a bit of a noob at conference speaking at the time, so I didn't really think anything of it. And I got there, and the fonts were all like messed up, and all of my slides, they were supposed to be in capital letters, and they'd all been like changed into lowercase because they were using like Google Slides, and I'd done it in Keynote. It was a total mess. And the way they'd set it up, they didn't have the speaker notes up, so I had no speaker notes. And so I'm talking, yeah. So luckily I knew the topic, and it's fine. And I'd given that talk before, but that was not experience I want to repeat. And then when I did a virtual conference, I was doing a talk at a virtual conference, and we were on StreamYard, which, for those people who don't know what StreamYard is, it is like a TV studio. So you come in StreamYard, and then StreamYard beams it out to wherever you're streaming to. And in StreamYard, when you're not live, you're automatically muted, so the audience can't see you. But I thought, I'll just do belt and braces, I'll mute myself. So the MC introduced me, and then I came on and started talking and forgot I was still on mute. So I'm merrily talking away, and he came back and goes, "Suze, you're on mute." I'm like, oh. So that was not a good way to start the talk, but luckily, I don't know, I tend to not dwell on these things too much and just go straight into it. So it was fine, but it was something that I didn't really need. But yeah, I really, those kinds of things where you kind of feel really like, this was a level of stress that added to a already stressful situation. But yeah, you can bounce back from it quite easily, I think. And a lot of people don't even, like, one of my friends was watching that one where I accidentally was on mute, and he didn't even remember like an hour later. So I was like, well, that puts it into perspective. Nobody remembers, and the feedback that I got on the talk was good. So
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So that made me think of so many things. But I should say, I love the idea of like, don't dwell on it. Something I tell folks a lot who are getting into speaking is, like, if you're, I try to relate it to to sports, a sporting event, especially a competitive one, that if you're playing that game, half of the people there who are watching it want you to do poorly. The other half want you to do really well. When you're giving a talk, everybody wants you to succeed. Like everybody is on your side. And like you always, I mean, and lots of other tips in there, but so I say that a lot, but your answers made me think of two fairly well, one event that happened recently and one that went all the way back to my university days. And so the university one was related to your Berlin talk. And this is in the early days of speaking. I took a public speaking course and then had to speak a lot as part of this ongoing senior project throughout my senior year. And one of the last presentations where we were like wrapping this up, we had a group project and I was like, I'll do most of the speaking. I'll make the slides. I liked doing that stuff. And I had same thing. I was like slides on USB disk or whatever, go and load it into this other computer, and it was going great. I was on slide 4 and then like no slide 5 and no slide 6, and the whole rest of the visuals for the presentation gone. And so I was like, well, now I have no visuals, and I practiced enough that it went okay, but I had nothing to refer to. I was like, that one. And then your second, like, I goofed. I actually didn't get called out on this one, but it was for a conference talk a year or two ago. And I have this setup here. It was in the pandemic. So I've got my mic, which goes through this little audio interface and then goes into the computer. And it's really weird because I have to set it up. I have to like choose the frequency on that device that gets sent into the computer. I don't totally know why, but it's like I can choose 44.1 or 48 or it's something like that. And the power went out in a meeting I had previously. And so I realized that it wasn't on and like quickly turned it back on and chose the wrong setting. And this is also the first week of me starting my new job. And what happens when I choose the right setting, I just sound like me. Hopefully I've got it right now. So I sound like this. When I choose the wrong setting, I sound like a mouse. My voice is like super, super high,
Wow.
but not so high that somebody who doesn't know me would be like, something's not working right. It's more like, this guy's got kind of a really high voice. This is really weird. And so I met all my coworkers for the first time with this voice that isn't my voice. And I gave a conference talk where the conference coordinator was like, well, I don't know you. I just met you. So gave this talk. And it was that somebody I know listened to the talk, took a video of it and sent it to me. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Fortunately, not many people went to that, but I don't know. Those are good. I felt like I had to get those out there, but I really commiserate with resonate with that idea of like, it's great experience to be able to think on your feet, to make those mistakes, and you just keep going and nobody really cares. It's totally fine.
Yeah. And it's a bit like earlier when I my machine decided it was going to do that. And I've been in that position as well when I've been an MC and my guest has dropped. I've had to ad lib for like 30 minutes before. So once you've done these things a few times, then like, nothing really bothers you, does it?
No big deal. Right.
But it's like anything, it takes practice. And I think anyone who's going to sit there and criticize you for a mistake you made like that, I would love to see them on the stage trying to do this stuff, because it's
Great
not
point.
easy, is it? It's easy to sit there in your chair or in your armchair or in your office or wherever you are with a critical look at somebody. But if you don't want to try it yourself, you're not really in a position to pick holes in it.
Absolutely. I love that. Well, that's it for now. Thank you so much, Suze. This was a ton of fun. Really appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me, Sean. I'm so sorry about earlier, but I really love the chat with you. So thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this was great, and no worries. And so one last thing before we go, if you, so I suppose tell the listeners and the viewers how to get in touch with you, and feel free if we missed anything that you want to plug real quick, go for it.
I got a fun fact I want to tell everybody, which I thought you were going to ask me, because you did send me a question or two beforehand. Like, you definitely didn't give me any spoilers, but you said, what's the thing that you're most proud of that you've built in the questions? And the thing that I'm most proud of that I've created is this book.
Ooh, I wrote a book. Amazing.
Yeah.
30-second coding. Okay.
Yeah. And the fun fact about this book is that it was published the same day as Dave Grohl's book. Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters published his autobiography last year on the same day as my book, because he heard that was a very auspicious date. And the Foo Fighters tweeted me a message of congratulations.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So it was really fun holding this book in my hands for the first time, and going into a bookshop and seeing it was even better, because it's like, this book actually exists outside of my house and it's going to be in somebody else's house. But when I got that tweet from the Foo Fighters, I was like, oh, I don't even care that I've got a book now. I've got a tweet from the Foo Fighters. So yeah, so that's the thing that I'm most proud of. So that's the thing I would like to plug. But yeah, people can get in touch with me via my website, which is suze.dev, SUZE.dev, or my contact details on there. I love meeting new people, and like I said, love to collaborate. So yeah, hit me up if you want to chat about anything, really. So yeah.
Fantastic. And just for folks who are listening in and not watching the video, that book was called 30-second coding. And where can people find it? Everywhere.
So yeah, if you want to know, it basically covers 50 topics in coding, and I took a portion of those, and I had to explain these concepts in like under 170 words each, which was hard.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like tweet level teaching.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was a good challenge. So yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, that's it for this show. Thank you all for being here. We will be back live again on July 7th with Benji Weinberger. And that is the day before I take the longest flight of my life so far. So it'll be a really interesting, and I'll be nervous a little bit. So it'll be a good show. Okay. So from all of us at CFE.dev, thank you for joining us for this show, and we will see you next time.